Gosh, I enjoy doing that. I hereby call to order this meeting of the Edison School Board. Mrs. Hutchison, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Crabtree? Here. Mrs. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Gambiani?
Here.
Mr. Matheson?
Here.
Mr. Paulson?
Here.
Mr. Hamlin is currently absent. Mr. Berman?
Here. Mrs. Bednar? You or your designated agents, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Bednar?
Good evening. I am here tonight with my assistant principal, Lauren Humphris. And as it is National Assistant Principals Week, I wanted to just take a brief moment to publicly thank her and all of our assistant principals in the district for all of their incredibly hard work. I think sometimes it's a thankless job. They work themselves, from the second they walk in the door and are often here hours and hours after the end of the school day. And so, before moving on tonight, I just wanted to publicly say thank you to Ms. Humphreys for We are very happy to be hosting the meeting this evening, and personally, I'm thrilled that a group of our students and their teacher were able to join us tonight to share with you a project that so completely encompasses the fit vision for our District 200 learning environment. This project that they will present to you enables them to access and synthesize and share knowledge while collaborating and creating anytime and anywhere. Their project fostered critical thinking, focused on a real-world issue, and helped these 6 learners develop a wide variety of new standards and skills. Last fall, Edison's incredibly hardworking and creative entrepreneurship teacher, Ms. Usha Ike, heard about the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow contest and asked her entrepreneurship students if any of them were interested in pursuing it. These 6 students stepped up, knowing full well that this project would require them to work many hours outside the school day for weeks on end. With coaching and support from Ms. Ike, along with several parents, community members, and district staff, these 6 students submitted a very impressive project proposal, which they will share with you now. So at this time, unfortunately, we have one student, Anastasia Thiel, who could not make it tonight. But at this time, I would like to introduce the rest of the Edison Solve for Tomorrow team. Louis Bellaccio. Jack Bendiskin. Sorry. Ian Connolly, Ryan Camarzell, Aiden Richardson, and their teacher, Ms. Usha Ike.
Hi everyone, my name is Ian Conley. I'm Aiden Richardson. Ryan Camarzell.
I'm Jack Bendixson. And I'm Louis Blocher.
And our team member Anastasia Thiel couldn't make it tonight, but this is the Edison Solve for Tomorrow team. And we'd like to share our journey on this project with you.
Did you know that April is the official Financial Literacy Month? It was passed in March of 2014 by the Senate and is recognized by organizations all across the U.S. This relates to our project because our business concept is an app that teaches kids financial literacy skills that they will use throughout their whole life.
What is the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow? It's a competition for high school and middle school students. It challenged them to find a creative way to solve an issue in the community by using STEAM.
For those of you that don't know, STEAM is science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
To start off the competition, the first phase was to fill out an application. These were the 3 main questions that the competition was based around. For the first question, we identified financial literacy as an issue in our community, and we spoke with a few bank executives to back this up. For the second question, we thought creating an app would be utilizing STEAM to address this issue. And for the third question, we thought our biggest hurdle would probably be our limited technology use. After submitting this application, this brought us to the top 5 in Illinois, which then brought us to phase 2, which was to create an activity plan. We needed to create an activity plan to show Samsung exactly what we were going to do in order to accomplish our goal. To start out, we created a survey for 5th and 6th grade students, as well as 7th and 12th grade students. You can see some of the questions from the 5th and 6th grade survey here, and also the 7th grade survey. We needed to get information to back up our claim that financial literacy was an issue. We also met with and interviewed local community leaders, as well as we attended webinars online from Samsung and other people online. We also created a prototype app and website, and Anastasia and Louis taught a lesson on financial literacy to 6th grade students. These were just a few of the major things on our list that we then accomplished. My job was to create an app using Adobe XD. So I created an app prototype using Adobe XD. I got this resource from Mr. Nick Hall, who is the founder of Double Bear LLC, who we connected with through Nepris. Nepris is a platform that connects businesses and other people through schools and other projects. He gave me multiple ideas on how to go about creating an app prototype, and I felt most comfortable with Adobe XD.
This is an example of a scenario we would use in our app. I came up with this by thinking of ways people would spend money, like in this example, it's at a coffee shop. And then why people would spend money to like fit in socially or for their own comfort. And we have more scenarios.
I created a video with Hit Film 4 Express and had lots of help from Alex Donnelly, a videographer from Ivor Andrew.
We came up with the idea for a financial literacy resource during our entrepreneurship and social studies classes. We were given the task to find a solution for a problem that we have seen in our community. During our social studies class, we were learning about monopolies, the stock market crash, and the international debt during the early 1900s. We realized that this was the first time that we were really learning about money in the real world, and we are already in 8th grade. Throughout experiences and things that we have learned from our community, we have seen that this problem is bigger than we think. Our teacher told us about the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow contest, and we decided that we wanted to find a solution to this and spread awareness.
We started by learning more about financial literacy. We interviewed Mr. Economos, Financial Advisor and Chief Retirement Officer of Fiduciary Financial Partners, Ms. Ann Odell, Executive Director of Home DuPage, Ms. Evelyn Rodriguez, Vice President and Branch Manager of Glen Ellen Bank and Trust, and Mr. Bob Hutchinson, President of Glen Ellen Bank and Trust.
I think in DuPage County alone, I think there's like 66,000 people that utilize the food banks.
One of the things that surprises us is the amount of people that overdraw their accounts. Write more checks than you have in your account, they're going to overdraw, going to the negative.
Right. You know, just people who don't understand it because it's not taught in the schools. It's not.
We next created surveys for 5th and 6th graders, as well as 7th graders and up. We showed the bank executives as well as teachers and parents our surveys. We then sent out the surveys to elementary, middle, and high school kids in our district. We received many positive results that helped prove the need of financial literacy in our community. From our data, we found that only 1/3 of those who participate in the survey do not have a budget or a checking account.
We created a website using Wix.com to promote our idea. Our website contains information on how to contact us and find other resources.
We created scenarios that could be used in our app. After finishing the activity, users are able to see how their decisions impact their money management skills.
We created a prototype app that allows the user to interact with our scenarios. We are continuing to enhance our app and add more activities.
We were able to present a lesson about financial literacy to a few of the classes at our school. We had the students evaluate their values and list what was important in ways that they would spend their money. They created a plan for saving money, as well as actively having a chance to try out our scenarios.
Actually making connections and counting up with the money, and then if they lost the money, they're like, oh, so it had more meaning and connections for them.
We're ready to invest in our future. Will you help us solve for tomorrow?
We will be receiving $25,000 in Samsung technology for our school. Currently, we have a Samsung Galaxy phone, 2 Samsung Chromebooks, one of which turns into a tablet, and a Gear 360 camera. Although we didn't move on to the national level, through this project, we have learned the importance of project management skills to complete tasks by an assigned due date, being able to collaborate with a team as well as with other individuals, and also networking in order to find solutions to our problems.
We had a lot of help from a lot of different people throughout the district. And I just wanted to point out a few main people that helped us a lot. We had Dr. Schuler, we had Mrs. Locknell, very helpful. We had Mrs. Bednar and Ms. Humphries also helped us a lot. And our geometry teacher, Mrs. Prozek, also sat in on a lot of meetings and helped us a lot.
We also wanted to thank some of our local community leaders, like Mr. Bob Hutchinson and Mr. Thomas. And we wanted to give special thanks to Ivor Andrew, who helped us make our video and loaning us some equipment to film our video.
We'd like to give a special thanks to each of our parents who gave us hard work, dedication, and flexibility to help us with all of our needs during the whole competition. Thank you.
Later, we're going to ask the students to help us develop an app so we can understand school financing. Are there any modifications to the agenda any board member would like to make? Hearing none, we'll move to public comments. There being no public comment, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Vroman, and let me just add my thanks. I know the students left to go take a picture, but what a joy to work with those students through this project. This, I think, kind of started and grew throughout the course of their work on this, and as they progressed through the competition. And I don't know, but I think we've got a couple of candidates for that incubator class at the high school. So, Mr. Gambiani, maybe that's your next group of kids that you're going to coach in that class. But really, really, really well done. I think that Mrs. Bednar is probably out with the students. So I'll wait a second before I share one thing that I want to for her. Just a couple of other things, though, that I wanted to share with the board. We've had a couple of questions recently, kind of always happens right after spring break, as folks look to our calendar and look to the end of the year and say, okay, when is the official last day of school going to be announced? The board has historically done that calendar adjustment at your May meeting. If we do it in April, we run the risk of doing it a little bit too early before we're truly beyond any potential weather elements. We do have to make up the one day that we lost due to snow this year. So as of right now, the last day would be June the 6th. But again, the board at your May meeting will officially announce that calendar adjustment, and that's the point at which we would adjust everything that's certainly on our website. Wanted to also share with the board, you may have noticed that you saw in the paper yesterday some discussion about a pretty significant housing development down in the southern end of our district. So where the Nokia building is that sits at the corner of Warrenville Road and Naperville, that building itself actually sits inside of the boundaries of District 203, but when you move immediately beyond the structure, there's about 100 acres of vacant land behind the building that actually sits in our district. So that's right where the boundary line goes through. And at the Naperville City Council, there was some discussion just in the last couple of days about the potential sale of that property and the development of a residential kind of mixed-use development. There'd be a combination of multifamily, townhomes, some single-family home, but pretty significant numbers. They're talking in the range of 300 to 500 units, which would be a really significant development inside the school district. So we don't know a ton about that yet. Following hearing about it in the papers, all of you did. We've reached out to the city of Naperville today to ask for an opportunity to learn a little bit more about that development. It is not currently zoned residential, so there's some zoning steps that would have to happen first before the development could move forward. But just in the early conversations that I had today, I get the feeling that that project's potentially got some legs. So we're going to have to really watch that closely and work closely with the city of Naperville. We don't typically do a lot with them, but just again keep in context that obviously by far the biggest, but there are several developments down in the southern end of the district. We've shared a couple with the ward board down in Warrenville as well that again certainly could add some students to the district in the next foreseeable future. So much of that.
Could that mean that a subdivision is divided in half by the school district?
It would not be. Well, it could be. So
Nokia building was knocked down. That it could be?
Could be. I don't believe that that's the intent. I think they were simply talking about vacant land behind that building that would be sold. So it would be entirely in ours. But that could happen. In fact, I think one of the developments that we shared in Warrenville, there's kind of a funky boundary line between 203 and 204 that would divide that proposed development. So yeah, it could in fact happen that way. In fact, I think there are a couple of houses down there right now that actually that does happen. There are a couple of houses that sit in 203 while some houses across the road sit in our school district. So again, I just wanted to share that. This morning, the Illinois Association of School Administrators in April every year does a volunteer recognition event, and I had the pleasure of taking two community members with me to that event this morning. Therese Janik, who is a Pleasant Hill parent, has really led the charge around a lot of the work in fundraising for our mobile food pantries. She's kind of helped to lead the charge in raising, I think, almost $60,000 to bring food pantries throughout the community, as well as support some of our efforts in getting food to some of the areas of need within the community. Was one of my volunteers that I took, as well as Scott Kurth, who has served as the chair of Citizens Advisory Committee since the inception of that group. So again, it's each superintendent within the region gets an opportunity to bring two volunteers, and so it was a pleasure to bring them. I'll send this around. It's got a nice little write-up on all the volunteers that different school districts brought. Shared with the board last week just an update that the Illinois State Board finalized the shifts in the new funding model with the evidence-based funding model. So kind of as expected, The increase for District 200 was about $289,000. That was close to what we anticipated. That the new evidence-based funding model would shift, and so those monies have been vouchered, and so the last, I think, 6 payments that we get from the state this year for general state aid will have the new dollars that are associated with them as well. And as we've shared, we are still behind a couple of categorical payments, but because of because more money is rolled into that general state aid formula, from a cash flow perspective, we are significantly ahead this year of where we were last year. So even with the lag in categorical payments, we are in better shape this year. And then the last thing that I wanted to share now that Rachel's back in the room. So I've done some work in the past with Northern Illinois University, and so there's a program at Northern Illinois University called the Margaret Key Leadership Fellows and Recognition. And so I had the pleasure this year of nominating 2 of our principals to be a part of that program. So if you are accepted, recognized as a part of that award group, there's a professional development opportunity that comes as a part of it, as well as an award. And so I'm pleased to share that Rachel Bednar was one of our 2 Margaret Key Fellows this year, along with Debbie Klein. So again, really congratulations. Last thing, warm weather today means summer must be just around the corner, which also means the 4th of July parades will be just around the corner. So I do need to know from board members, I'm just going to kind of put this on your radar, if you have an interest in walking in a couple of our community parades. I say a couple of our community parades this year. Last year we walked in the Wheaton 4th of July parade, but Warrenville does also have a parade as well. If you are interested, please let me know. I think I did see that Wheaton's registration for the parade is out and available now, so we can get a group registered if you are interested. So you can let me know that now, or you can check your schedule and shoot me an email as well. So if we've got enough interest, we'll definitely register a group. So, and that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart. Any questions and comments from board members? Hearing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. And again, I appreciate your forbearance. 1, acceptance of gift to Wheaton North High School Athletic Department Girls Basketball Program. 2, acceptance of gift to Wheaton Warrenville South High School. 3, approval to post revised policy 2.260, uniform grievance for public review and comment. 4, approval to post revised policy 4.40, incurring bid for public review and comment. 5, approval to post revised policy 5.20, workplace harassment for public review and comment. 6, approval of revised policy 7.440, private school students. 7, approval of paving projects and building permits at Edison, Franklin, Bauer, Johnson, Lowell, Pleasant Hill, and Eastbrook. 8, approval of middle school security camera purchase. 9, approval of bills payable and payroll. 10, approval of minutes March 14, 2018, open and closed. March 22, 2018, special meeting, open and closed. And approval to destroy recordings and closed sessions prior to November 2016 as allowable by law. And 11, approval of personnel report to include employment, resignation, retirement, and leave of absence of administrative, certified, classified, and non-union staff. Are there any items board members want removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, Dr. Stewart.
Just a couple of things. There were a couple of questions from board members that I just wanted to mention. Under a couple of the policies, we had a couple of policy references that got updated that I think were off in our listing, and we got those corrected. There was a question on the tech bid, so just by way of a reminder, this completes a camera system at the 3 middle schools that do not have a camera system, Edison being one of them. So this would be Edison, Monroe, and Franklin. Which is something that the facility committee discussed. We've been investigating along with our secure entry safety plans this year. But there was a question as to whether that proposal was in fact the lowest cost proposal. It was for the board, so I wanted to mention that. And then just a quick mention that you're also approving the paving projects, which is the last phase of the summer work. Those paving bids came in very, very good, and that kind of gets the board right where you hope to be in terms of spending on summer projects at about $4.2 million between the capital and the secure entry projects. So again, thanks to everybody for that. And then finally, last but not least, I just want to make a quick introduction. As a part of the personnel report this evening, the board will be approving the hire of a new assistant superintendent for administrative services. So Charlie, if you wouldn't mind standing up quickly. Dr. Charlie Kyle comes to us from St. Charles School District. He's spent the last 8 years, 8, did I get that right?
7 years.
7 years, I gave you one. 7 years as the principal at St. Charles East High School, was a middle school principal in St. Charles for a number of years prior to that. Comes with an incredibly impressive leadership resume, and we've said many times, we've certainly got big shoes to fill in this position, but Charlie brings a great skill set to do that. So Charlie, welcome. And he's a graduate of Wheaton Central, class of 1990.
Class of 90, yeah.
Any questions or comments from the consent agenda?
I have a comment.
Basically, I just want to thank Mr. Paulson for his intense review on some of the construction-oriented aspects of some of the consent agenda items that, he's passed a few questions on that have been, helpful for me to understand some of the, what's the right word, the intricacies of some of those contracts, and, I'm glad he's, looking at them so critically. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, just 2 quick comments. They're related to number 7, the paving projects. I just want to thank the administration. I asked some questions about kind of those bids, and I appreciate the really extensive research that was done in response to those questions. So I'm comfortable with that. And then the middle school security camera purchases, that's kind of the second leg of what we've been doing recently regarding to safety and security. Last month, the secure entrances. And so while these aren't solutions to the issue of safety and security, they're certainly answers that can help us along the way. And I do want to point out that it's consistent with our belief statements, which we don't get to look at very often and during the board meetings, but providing safe and secure learning environments for our students to support learning is one of the things we need to stay consistent with. So I appreciate that we're taking that additional step that didn't have as much conversation over the past years as secure entrances.
Anybody else? If not, I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Crabtree.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Paulson. Mrs. Hutchison, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Crabtree.
Yes.
Mr. Paulson.
Yes.
Mrs. Erickson.
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani.
Yes.
Mr. Matheson.
Yes.
Mr. Groman.
Yes. Consent agenda has passed. We now move to action items on the agenda. The first action item is to the approval to proceed to the construction document phase for the early childhood center project. Dr. Stewart.
So yeah, just a couple of introductory comments. Well, Mr. Setti will come up and get ready. So just a quick bit of history, because I've provided the timeline each time. At the board's last meeting, you approved the lease agreement. So the lease agreement with Zions Bank is what designates District 200 as the agent to now work on design and construction of this building. And so Mr. Passetti is here this evening with Nicholas to kind of give us an update on the design development phase that we've been working on for the last couple of months. A lot of energy and involvement of both district staff as well as the board's facility committee and really working through this design phase. And so we're pleased to bring you both a budget update and a design development update this evening. So, Seth?
With me tonight, Lauren Johnson, Leggett, part of the design team, Joe Nicholas, Scott Richards from Nicholas. So assist me with the presentation. So, move this on. Let's see. There we go. A little better. All right, so so tonight what we're going to do is take you through really what's been kind of the culmination of the design development phase, which we started on shortly after the January board meeting. I'm going to take you through tonight project budget update, design update, and we'll take you through the schedule and then open it up for any questions you may have. So with that, again, since last January, we've continued to develop the design that we started with in this kind of design phase and really working forward with that. What you're going to see tonight is kind of an overview. Behind this is a nice thick set of drawings, which are really, we're starting to develop all the details and exactly how the building goes together, working with the mechanical systems, and just going through overall with refining the design moving forward, working with staff. Really, this last 12 weeks, we've spent a lot of time with the design and core team, going through the specifics of the project and making sure that we're really following and adhering to the board goals that were established early on, and being very student focused. Recently brought on board toward the end of schematic design, brought our landscape architect on board. So we've started to develop that. We'll show you some early concepts they've developed for some of the outdoor learning spaces. And we're going to be working next week. We're going to start working hard and refining those even further going forward. So we've really, through this whole process, gone through and we've really been working hard to establish, obviously balancing the design, the budget, and trying to make sure that all stays on track. So from last time, and Joe's going to get into this in a moment, but some areas may have gone up, some have gone down as we've started getting more solid numbers, and Joe will address that in a moment. And really tonight we're here to seek approval to move forward into the next phase and get the building moving. So with that, I will turn it over to Joe.
Thanks, Paul. Good evening. Budget summary. As we look at the budget summary previously submitted, the SD budget totaling $11,597,400. We received the 90% PD, looking at the budget with actual subcontractors to get real-time numbers from the subs and developing this budget. Taking into consideration a little added square footage in the program, the addition of the geothermal system from the HVAC system, and the current market conditions, 90% PD budget, our cost, $11,855,440. Although that's over the original SD budget, looking forward to the balance of the contract numbers. The SD budget with contingencies, CM fee, insurance, design fees, owner costs being adjusted accordingly. As per the update, we're actually coming under budget. Overall, the project is $16,727,445 as compared to the SD budget at $16,944,016.
See, most of our budget placeholders have now become actual numbers. So as the design progresses, we are getting real current market condition feedback from each of our contractors. We will of 30 to 45 contractors that have been working with us throughout this DD phase, and will continue working with us throughout the design process, and ultimately, hopefully, better market. Before we move into the design segment of our presentation, we want to questions pertaining to the overall budget, any specific line items.
Can you go back a slide? One more, I'm sorry. So I just want to clarify, make sure that that the board, and looking at the budget, right? So there are really two components that are critical to understand. The total building costs. So the building costs are all of the costs associated with actually constructing this facility that's being done through the lease. So Zions Bank is constructing a facility with a projected cost right now of $15,439,319. There are some post-construction costs that involve some things outside of the building, the development of a new outside play area, demolition of the existing building, as well as some furniture, fixtures, equipment pieces. Those are all broken out on a separate piece, but those post-construction allowances or costs are at $1,288,125. So your total cost is at the $16,727,445, but the building cost, that's what's going to be constructed through the lease agreement, is at $15,439,319. And so as you look at SD, that's the schematic design budget. So the last time that you reviewed this in January, those were the schematic design costs. We're now at the 90% design development piece. And again, this is all significantly reduced from the early cost estimates you saw that were substantially higher than that.
What does the 90% DD mean again?
Design development phase, so we're 90% through design development phase.
Okay, what does that mean? And when you say design development, you're saying the drawings and the, what is,
And that's the next segment of our presentation, so you can see what that 90% DD stage looks like and what design components are known at this time. Obviously, we still have a ways to go throughout the design process, but we're starting to understand what the intent is with regards to mechanical systems, what's the design intent with regards to finishes, partition types. The civil design is pretty far along at this point in time, things of that nature.
And the 10% that remains, is there a big exposure of numbers in that?
Not at the DD stage, no.
At the 90%, have we covered the really significant components of the building?
Absolutely. Yes.
And again, 15.4 is the building number. That's kind of the number we've been talking about for a while, right? Now that's the portion that can be, that the leasing entity will, in effect, cover some portion of, and the owner costs technically come out of fund balance or some other source.
Yeah, all costs associated with the building, whatever the $15,439,000 ends up as a final number, all of those costs related to the construction of this building will be paid out of the escrow account as a part of the lease agreement. Any of the post-construction costs are costs that would be paid directly by the school district, GMES, through fund balance would be the assumption, or through fundraising. So remember, you've got a foundation that's actively working on a capital campaign with a target number that actually is a little bit bigger than that post-construction allowance. So the hope would be that their fundraising efforts can bring about every bit of that post-construction allowance.
Technically, interest rate is not a concern in this respect. I mean, the interest rate is really part of the lease, if you want to call it. So there's really no interest factor that we're dealing with here as far as construction timing or anything, or if it is, it's built in some way. So the timing of this event starting, we'll get that in a minute, but if we move forward in September or whatever date we start this, that's not sensitive to interest rate fluctuations.
Right. That's a known factor. So the schedule is distributed along with the 90% DD set of drawings to all the contractors.
Okay, so in summary then, the design, we have 90% design estimates, if you want to call it. I mean, the ultimate test of that, though, is the actual bidding process.
I guess in your experience, or any of the other consultants there, how are numbers coming in general in the marketplace right now? Are they, you know, I mean, we've had catastrophes that may demand on raw materials and so on. I mean, I assume you adjust for those in your estimates and so on? And
So they're stable now.
Okay, they're stable,
Yes.
and you've therefore reflected those in your...
We don't have the magic ball to know what's going to happen come August later this year, but we expect it to be similar.
Okay. And ultimately, I guess, the final phase of this process is we have to do the bid, and if the bid numbers come in within the guidelines that we're hoping to see here, then we proceed or not proceed based upon that. This is just a next step along the way of design development and leading to ultimate bidding process. Is that a fair statement?
Let me try to, I think, clarify the 90% number. So tonight we're being asked to approve 100% design development phase so that we can go into the next phase. The 90% number is when Nicholas took the drawings at that 90% stage to begin developing this. So that's what they're referring to. And then I would say maybe the one kind of unknown, just from my perspective, in terms of the market, is the impact of steel. You know, that's not just the steel of the structure, it has a lot of impact on different elements of the building. Hopefully we'll be bidding quick enough that we don't have feel the full impact of that. But that's, at least, you know, in my other world, that's something we're aware of. I should say that's why we still maintain some contingency in the budget first and then something else.
And we should know about that potential impact prior to going out to bid if that ultimately becomes reality. We should know about that.
I mean, when the fluctuation, I assume, is part of tariff issues that's being discussed, or demand on structural, or what is it?
Perfect.
So continuing on, we kind of did this a little bit in reverse. We did the budget first and then program. So as they alluded to, there was a small increase, about 500 square feet in the size of the building from SD to DD. Some of that came in from, you know, as we're putting mechanical systems into the spaces and looking at the storm shelter and how thick those walls have to be, and we're really refining it. It's really more in the what we call the circulation walls and chases. We didn't make the quarters any bigger, but just as you start putting real numbers and real dimensions to everything, just a little bit of creep. And we didn't want to, you know, really don't want to have to cut any square footage out of classrooms or some of those important spaces. So we, you know, just going through. But as you can see, just from the exercise with the budgeting, we're still on track in terms of how that goes. So. Getting into the site, we had talked previously about the current Elmwood Street right-of-way that's along the borders the west edge of the property. We actually have been showing it about halfway down. Looking at that further, that actually extends down the whole full length of the site. It represents about 0.65 acres. So it's not a small area that we're going to be potentially gaining here. All the paperwork's been filed with the city. They're reviewing it. It's in process right now. So we just got an email back from Paul Redmond. That is in process. We're anticipating that moving forward. So that was kind of a discussion on what we're going to continue over the next few weeks and making sure that that is still valid. It's, you know, part of a great asset. Really overall, the site plan hasn't changed. We're still looking at, right now, the main, about 68 off-street staff parking, visitor parking out front, our bus drop visitor, the secure drop-offs for the parent along here, and out there, structured play, the outdoor learning play area. And then we are looking at still taking, right now, about, I forgot how many that was, about 25, 26 spaces as an alternate bid, in case the numbers come in well. Parking is never, you know, you never have enough. It's kind of like storage in the building. Overall floor plan, again, very similar to layout as the last time, just again refining where all the spaces are at, mechanical spaces, which will be on more time and then refining office layouts and how the nurse functions, connectivity to the corridor, student parent resource and diagnostics. So we've been really working with the design team and going through and making sure that everything is in its place. With that, I'll turn it over to Warren to talk a little further about it.
So this image represents the standard classroom pod. These are a pair of classrooms that are joined together by a shared integrated therapy space that doubles as an office space for staff or teachers. And then there is a shared toilet room between each classroom for the use of each classroom. And then there's the mechanical space at the perimeter wall, so that draws heat from the geothermal system through piping in the building, and then that heat or cool air is then distributed into each classroom from that point. Well, another thing that we've done since the last update is we pulled in this wall at the classroom entrances to create a little bit of a learning area in the corridor, and you'll see an image of that. So you can provide a writable surface, you can put furniture in the hallway, and actually activate that corridor as part of the student experience learning. So this is a section through the classroom demonstrating what we've modeled through our software. So you can see the corridor here, you can see the mechanical space above the corridor, and then we've modeled student height furniture within the classroom, the windows of the window wall, and then casework along that shared interior wall. And then another thing that we've done is we've started to apply finishes, and we've been talking to the design team about this. And so what we're doing is really creating areas for wayfinding, so it's easy to navigate the building. We've been applying playful colors, durable materials, materials that are friendly to children and safe to use, but that will also stand the test of time. And then we've been applying those throughout the building. So creating focus areas at the main entrance and then at the entrance to the courtyard, and then tying the classrooms together so it feels like a cohesive whole. So this is our current finishes palette. So you can see that we've been putting thought to what materials we're using, where we're using them. We've established this color palette with the facilities team and with the design team, and we're using these playful interior elements to help guide students as to where they need to be. So what you can see here is several images of the building. So this is an aerial image of our current building model. So we're modeling each element to make sure that we have it documented appropriately, that the documents are clear to bidders as we move into this construction documents phase, and then we have everything coordinated. So this is an artist rendering of the north entrance. So this would be the parking lot behind you here, and then this would be the sidewalk where parents would pull up their cars and drop off their children to go to school. And then the materials are not necessarily finalized at this point, or the systems are finalized, but the material finishes and colors, we were going to finalize those further with the design team and the facilities team. This is a rendering of the main entrance. You can see that we're lifting up this canopy to provide a significant wayfinding tool, and then we're also using building signage to communicate that as well. And then plenty of glass and lightness at the entry to convey that it's a welcoming place to be. Here's an image of the classroom. This is from the eye height of a parent or teacher. So you can see the scale of the furniture and the type of furniture that's going to be planned is going to be child height and child friendly. Although the furniture package is still going to be designed in this next phase. But this is the character and the scale that we're thinking. And then you can see that we're bringing in some windows into the corridor, bringing some tall doors with glass on the top, and then we're bringing that casework at the sink wall. Here's an image that we took from the eye height of a child, so you can see what this room looks like from their perspective. So as we're going through this process, we're thinking about the student experience and trying to design for them. And so something that we've done that's playful is we've taken the ceiling and kind of pulled it away at this window to create a little bit of a light shelf. And so not only does that provide a playful indicator that each classroom is the same, but it also pulls in additional daylight into the space. And here's that corridor area that we were talking about earlier. So in between each classroom, there's this kind of announcing wall that directs you that, hey, there's an entrance here. But then it also has a writable surface on it. So and it's down at child height, so they can take a dry erase marker and write on the wall. A teacher could put a calendar up here and use it to indicate to people what events are upcoming, or anything, since it's a dry erase surface. And then another thing that we've done is we were asked to provide some way to recognize donors. And so this is the main entrance. These are the two main entrances to the school. So what we've done is we took something that we were already going to spend money on, a ceiling, and then we basically came up with a system to replace ceiling tiles with perforated metal tiles that would be embossed with the name, quote, or likeness of the person who donated. So here's two potential ways to look at that. And so this is just a 2x2 ceiling tile, but it's perforated metal, so it's not going to rust. It's not going to age over time. It's going to be there for the life of the building. It'll provide a playful way to integrate that into the building itself. And with that, I will get back to Paul.
So again, working with our landscape architect, we've started looking at, as I said, we have the outdoor learning play area and then the secure outdoor play. So three of the concepts that have come up or that they've developed so far that we're going to start reviewing with staff. For the outdoor play area, getting into the 2 to 5-year-old play structures, a lot of climbing elements, really focusing on learning through play, having some sensory elements, but also some imaginative play, structured play, large motor, track. We're going to work with grades, create embankment slides, things that are just ways to work within the courtyard as well. City wanting us to compress that area slightly just because of stormwater concerns. If anything backs up, they don't want flooding. So to take advantage of that, we're going to have some elevation changes in that space. So really working with the grade changes to develop areas to climb, safe areas to climb, and again, some embankment slides. But staff really wanted to, although we have the trike track and elements out here with the play surface in the middle, we also talked about having and activating the space, not just making it all sensory, but actually making it outdoor learning where you have small gathering areas, seating areas, imaginative play with, say, like a little playhouse structure that the kids can, put on little performances or whatever they may, do, just use their imagination. And then using height changes with embankment slides, seating, additional seating areas, but also looking at some movable items like sand and water tables, hammock swings, water features. Those things right now, we are looking at those as potential donor items. We'll take them as an alternate bid to actually get pricing on and identify costs. In the base bid though, all the hardscapes. So whichever option we end up in, it may be a combination of these two. As I said, we're going to starting next week, start working with the design team to try and meld this together, working with staff. But the hardscape, so any of the concrete, probably some of the plantings, anything that would have to be there physically on day one would actually be part of it. And then, before I get into that, any questions on the design before I get into the schedule?
I got a couple of questions. If you go back to the three-dimensional axon.
Aerial view?
The aerial view. Yeah, that one right there. So it looks like there's sidewalks, from the play area into the side of the building, but there's no doors on there. Is there a purpose for those in that green space?
Yeah, so those aren't sidewalks. They're just changes in the landscape surface. So we were thinking that we could use several different types of grass and then maybe some mulch or gravel to kind of indicate that there's a continuity between the surface of the building and the ground. So those striped areas line up with the tall windows. So you can kind of see that translating into the premises.
Okay, so they're not sidewalks. Okay, and so the next slide, speaking of the surface of the building, so now that we know that the exterior panel on those classroom wings is within budget, have you given any thought to kind of changing up some of the color sequence on those panels, maybe some tone variations to kind of change the rhythm and aesthetic of that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the next step. We wanted to make sure that we were in that area because there was at one point talk about potentially switching it over to a different material. Now that we're at that point, I think we're going to start bringing again Monday. We'll bring actual physical samples of the panels and brick and what ideas we have started out, but we're actually going to start developing that a little further.
Okay, I just want to sound like that to address the board.
I have a couple of questions. 7 years ago or so, we started a project to deal with the early learning center, and that building had a square footage that was far in excess of this building. Do you recall what that square footage was approximately? 59?
Yeah, I think it depends on when, because I remember dating back to probably 2005 when I wrote probably the first program for this building. So it's changed many times since that point. But yeah.
So in response to the community's commentary, I'll call it, on this project, we have reduced the square footage from, what was it? 59,000 down to about 42,000.
Correct.
Now, because of time, I'm not sure the cost has changed a lot. It's dropped somewhat, but as I recall the numbers. But so, fundamentally, I guess I have two questions. One, I know we're going to use alternative. We're going to keep some alternative early learning space in other locations that we would not have done originally. Again, a reaction to what the community's told us. But now, when we talked earlier today, I heard something about 500 new homes coming in. When this is done, what capacity are we going to be at? Number one. Number two, if we have that kind of expansion, not that I'm willing to move forward on any kind of bigger building, but is this building susceptible for expansion and so on? I don't want to, I think is at Madison, we have Sandburg, one of the schools doesn't lend itself to the fixes we want to do, so I want to make sure we're not in that capacity. So first, how about a response to that first?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we anticipated, we've always anticipated potential future expansion out to the south. So we're trying to make sure that whatever we develop for this structured play out here, I mean, eventually that would become potentially courtyard space, and we would have to, but you'd have more students, so obviously that would make more sense that you have multiple play areas, but we've always planned on future expansion out this direction. But obviously we're limited because with the geothermal, we'll have that out here, but we're planning all that in anticipation of that happening.
What kind of capacity will we have on day one of this project? Well, ballpark. I mean, it seems to me we're pretty full. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think Stephanie, I'll defer to you, but I think we had talked about, you were talking about the potential that we go to all blended, and so that right now where you may only have 15 max in the classroom, that could go up to 20 because with a full blend they may do more kids, so you have some built-in expansion a little bit. From the start, I'm not sure what's the status on that.
We're still waiting for that information to come in terms of different programs. Right now we are built to capacity, and we have a program at Longfellow. We're anticipating similar needs next year as well. And we have an opportunity for additional growth through some grants. So if those come in, we will definitely maximize that space and use the other spaces in the district that we've identified at the elementary levels.
Yeah, so they're built into the plan, though, Joan, I answer your question by saying the building is designed for 14 classrooms. That if at capacity, if you had 20 students in each of those classrooms, AM and PM, that would be the best way to calculate like total building capacity if you were absolutely full. Now, what I will say, so a couple of things. You asked some questions about how did some of the square footage kind of change in this design over perhaps, where design was before? One of the things that Paul and the team were very thoughtful of, I think with a lot of discussion with Stephanie and the team early on, is where are there places where we can, in essence, have like multi-use space, right? So I think some of the other iterations of buildings that you may have seen, there may have been a separate teacher work area that was different than the integrated therapy space. But the reality is that the integrated therapy space is only being used when classes are in session and then teachers aren't at their desk, right? So, just a simple kind of design change by having that multi-use space actually significantly starts to reduce square footage. We did cut a couple of classrooms out of the design, but we also, when you go back to the big design and go to like the front kind of teacher-student work area, so I think original designs of the building, there was like a library learning center separate from a diagnostic space, separate from like a resource area, and we've kind of created some multi-use spaces so that we can make most effective use of the space within a building. And the last thing I guess I'll mention is that, not that it would be by design, but there were a few kind of non-classroom spaces that were programmed for the building, the OTPT space, the kind of those two spaces that Paul's pointing to. Those are sized as classrooms. So if you absolutely needed to, moving forward, there is some capacity to convert spaces into to future classroom spaces. And again, that was done semi-intentionally. We're going to need OTPT space within the building, but I think designed very thoughtfully to allow for kind of what I guess I would call short-term expansion should you need it, and then obviously with the site plan, long-term expansion if you need it.
Okay, so in summary then, what I'm hearing is that the design and development of this building is not at full capacity. If there were, we have a projected growth. We have projected flat, really. That's what our projections are showing. We have this kind of thing, but based on our current capacity, the design of this building will handle our needs, and a year from now, when it's built, it's not going to be undersized. We've given that consideration. All right, and then kind of the last question I have is when we look at the, this is targeting a August of 19, completion and occupancy date. When does the intent is to use the existing facility and for the year ending June 30th, 19, I guess it is, right? And then the demolition occurs when? Before the building opens? Is it, because we need the parking, etc.
Let Joe address that.
Okay.
So the demolition of the existing building will take place in the summer of 2019.
Okay.
Once the staff and kids are out, we go in there, we abate, we demo. That's also our parking lot area. That's also our new detention pond area. We will immediately get into commencement of that work and complete that over that summer with preparation of August completion of 2019. So we'll still be doing some site restoration, especially in the south, because a lot of our spoils coming from the north will have to be trucked over to the south green area. But that's kind of the spoils.
Okay. As far as that, do we have, when we contract on this, do we lock in that kind of August date or penalize people if they fail to complete by? Those are things that concern me. Absence of strikes or who knows what could happen. But I am very concerned because we're not going to have a building after we demolish it. So how do we concern or deal with that contractually? I guess is the point of getting at. Is there some way?
First of all, we've never not delivered the building on time in 30+ years. Secondly, to add some comfort to it, our new building construction phase will be very far along come June, prior to the commencement of wrecking the building. So if there is an unforeseen condition that we encounter during the construction phase that might delay something, we'll know about it.
And I guess the last question I have is, because this is what I would call off-season work, I mean, typically schools do their expansions in the summer, do you anticipate we'll experience any kind of savings because we're working in what I'll call the period school districts are not normally built? And I assume most of the contractors that we'll be seeing are school-related contractors.
Yes, definitely. I think we've always tried to target late summer, early fall for bidding. I think that's the perfect time. I think the idea of having winter work, especially for masonry, we have a lot of masonry work, concrete work, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, they all know this is winter, early spring work, and yes, I think numbers will reflect that.
Question. One thing I volunteered to do, in addition to being on school board, is I'm the buildings and grounds chair for my church. And now I'm counting repairing the flat roof. Does this building have a flat roof? Because I thought in the earlier design, I saw slanted roofs on it. And,
no, it's actually, no, it's not. Let me go back to that. You're looking at it. So what you're seeing here is the roof is actually kind of a butterfly shape, and actually probably a better view of that is well, it's hard to see there, but it's probably about
there's a pitch.
Yeah, it's pitched inward, and then where it is potentially flat, it's not where you slope the structure. So like on the high masses here, we're sloping the structure back to to one side and draining out. Here we're sloping in this direction and collecting here, we're trying to minimize tapered insulation because obviously with the R values and stuff, we get pretty thick. Really, we start with almost a 6-inch base layer of insulation. So then by the time you put all your taper on, so if we were making a perfectly flat roof and do it all with tapered insulation, at some places on the roof you can end up with 16 inches of insulation just because of the height of the taper. So we're utilizing slope structure to minimize as much as we can to, again, try and keep that reasonable.
Thank you, Paul.
Does it make you happy, Jim, or not? I can't. You don't want a flat roof, or you do?
I don't want a flat roof. I'm not an architect. I'm not the design engineer, but from my personal experience, I don't want a flat roof.
I understand the point. Right. So that was a good answer.
From ground level, it might be flat.
One kind of follow-up question. You mentioned geothermal a couple of times.
Correct.
When we were here listening to you last, we were at the end of the schematic design phase, and the mechanical system at the time was still an unknown. The facility committee met, the facility committee meeting met, and it sounds like you moved to the geothermal system. Can you maybe describe generally what that means and what the feedback was?
From a cost standpoint, so
how that system works.
So basically what it does is they'll drill wells probably about 500 feet deep. We're going vertical here just because we don't have as much open land space to do a horizontal well field. But basically what it does is it uses the earth, the temperature of the earth to temper, heat, and cool. So so during the cooling season, it'll dump it into the ground or drop from there. And in the heating season, it'll take that temperature and bring it back in, so that you're really, instead of having equipment on the inside of the building that's constantly heating and cooling air to get it tempered, it's really coming in at really the ideal temperature. So then you'll have an individual heat pump unit in the classroom, which again offers you very good flexibility in terms of humidity control and just temperature control. Because when you're looking at a boiler system, a lot of times you have to shut it down at the end of the season and then bring it up, and you get a day like today, and so the building's hot. I know our office building, I walked into the SSC today, and it was probably felt like 90 degrees in there. But what we talked about last time, I think during SD we were talking, we weren't sure exactly how much that premium was going to be, and so I think we were talking like 300 or so, or 350. We've actually narrowed it down now, so it's only about 200,000 differential for the premium for the well field. And with that, we're looking conservatively, I guess, at a 7 to 10 year payback.
And the other benefit, I think, in an early childhood environment, with the ability to control temperature in individual rooms, with the uniqueness of individual students and some of the challenges they might have, you might be able to monitor and control that for those particular students as opposed to seeing the entire wing of the building. So from an energy efficiency standpoint and from the ability to create a good learning environment, it's actually a pretty good solution for a relatively short payback.
Right. And unlike the rest of the others, the early child is on a different time schedule, really. They're in session more often. So it really makes more sense from that standpoint.
Any other questions from board members?
Is this really our first one? And so I know we touched briefly on schedule in terms of occupancy and such, but again, tonight, obviously, requesting the approval to move into the next phase. Tomorrow, we start our next 12-week burst of getting documents put together so that we can get them ready for bid. We plan on coming back to the June board meeting with about an 80% budget. So we'll know pretty close to then if we're tracking closer. Then we will come back to you again at the July board meeting for the CD approval, and we'd be out to bid the next day. Receiving bids in early August with the August 15th board meeting to award contracts, and then we will be starting construction immediately following. And then getting back into the occupancy and the timeline with the substantial budget. So.
Joe, one more thing. Can you just kind of quickly share? So a little bit of the rationale around building some alternates into to this. I think, Jim, you asked the question to say, so what happens if you get out to bid and for whatever reason we don't hit the market at the perfect time and costs come in a little bit higher? Can you talk a little bit about that?
We're going to create some alternates that might be a deduct off the base bid and the base scope of work, as well as have some add alternates for enhancements. Maybe it's a different type of floor system or a different lighting layout, a type of light, ceiling product. So I think I'm recommending that we create, if we're going to do this, let's create kind of a shopping list on midday for some various adds or deducts, just to give us some options. If numbers come in more competitive than we anticipated, well, maybe we can take some of those enhancements and still fit within our budget. But I think building in that flexibility is critical. Just so it's not an all or nothing type of scenario on midday with one base scope of work with no flexibility.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any questions? Yes, Brent.
No, I just want to conclude by commending the team for getting us through this phase and trying to balance all those very unique program needs and responding to the site constraints. And I think one of the things that's challenging about this project is trying to squeeze this building between an existing school that has to remain operational, the play field to the south, as well as the dealing with the stormwater issues. And of course, working within the financial constraints that this lease agreement has developed. So I think the team's done a great job. I think it's going to be a really nice facility for the community and the staff, and I think our community is going to be proud of the overall solution.
Joe, Paul, thank you very much. Seeing there are no further questions or comments, I hereby ask for a motion and a second to approve, proceed to the construction document phase for the Early Childhood Center project as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Paulson.
Second.
And Mrs. Erickson, Mrs. Hutchison, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mrs. Erickson?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mr. Campiani?
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Groman?
Yes. The motion to proceed to the construction document phase for the Early Childhood Center project as presented is passed. We will now move to the second action item, approval of contracts with Leggett Architects and Nicholas and Associates. Dr. Schuler?
And really so we met with the lease agreement approved. The lease agreement designates again the district as the agent to construct this building, and so obviously you have spent quite a bit of time already with the teams from both Leggett and Nicholas, but we now need to execute agreements with them. I want to assure you that we've spent quite a bit of time vetting out the agreements, making sure that obviously the fees are fair, market fair for the certainly the cost of the project, and that all needs are met. So I don't know if the Facilities Committee, they've had a chance to review work on these. So Brad, Rod, if you have any additional comments on that?
I'll just give a quick overview for the board. So these two contracts are pretty standard AIA contracts. American Institute of Architects. These two are complementary to each other. So the art design contract and the construction management contract are designed to work together. The district legal counsels, I'm having a hard time talking today, been involved through this entire process. The modifications, from what I can see, are pretty typical for these types of agreements. And as Dr. Shula mentioned, the fees are, I believe, competitive with the market, so I feel comfortable with the overall package. And like I said, I did provide some questions early in the process about a week or so ago to the administration, and I know and some of those have been, most of those have been developed in there, and I'm comfortable with the other decisions. So I'm satisfied going forward with that. These are acceptable as presented.
These are still within the budgets that we've projected. And again, we're contracting to do what here? We're not yet contracting to do a building. We're doing a further development of the costs from the design and so on. The completion of those processes so that we can go to bid. Is that a fair statement?
These are the contracts that would cover the entire project, but obviously if you don't accept the bids, there is no project. So you are still going to pay some of the costs associated with design of the building, because you will have designed a building if it goes out to bid, but yes, but these contracts would cover through the entire construction of the building.
So let me add to that. So what's going to happen here, well, kind of 5 key points. What's going to happen here going forward? Leggett going to proceed into the construction document phase, which is development of the drawings that are become much more technical in the specifications. They will give it to Nicholas, who will create, pull it apart into individual bid packages for trades, probably 10 to 13 bid packages, 10 to 15 bid packages. And they'll send it out to the interested trade contractors. So you might have a masonry contractor, a roofing contractor, mechanical contractor, etc. Those will be competitive public bids. They will come back after the bids have been reviewed and received and reviewed with recommendations coming from Nicholas and Leggett. They'll come to us for award, and then to the lowest responsive bidder for each individual package. So what you're seeing in these numbers is really just an estimate, the latest estimate from Nicholas. The market will, through that competitive bid process, establish what the cost is going to be. So after we as a board award the individual contracts, like we did with the paving contractors, and then we will assign those back to Nicholas to hold and manage as their subcontractors. So that's how the process is going to work over the next 3 months, roughly 3 months.
We have an agency agreement with Zions Bank to represent them, represent them as an agent to do this. So when these contracts are entered into, are we doing it as their agent? Okay, so it's in our name in that relationship.
Yeah, Joe, these contracts are standard architecture, American Institute of Architecture contracts, which you really can't modify very much in my experience. If you make any modifications, they can be very minor. But we were very careful to point out that although the definition of owner is in there, is clarified, I point District 200 as an agent for ZB Bank, who is going to be the owner of the building.
As time goes on, we will authorize expenditure out of that escrow. We as a district. Now, will that appear on our bill list? I didn't think it would. Okay,
no,
that's still true.
It will not. We will authorize the expenditure at our level administratively, but that will not appear on your bill list because there is not an expenditure out of the district. So all funds are expended out of the escrow account, but again, as the agent of the building, as construction bills come in, we would authorize payment of those bills.
Does the building committee get involved, facilities committee get involved in that process as well? I mean, the approval process?
At the board level?
Yeah, I mean the committee, or we're not doing it at the board level, but does the committee get involved or no? Is that good? I guess that's right. I guess
as long as the contractor is performing in compliance with their contracts, and we have representatives, so they are sitting right there, and we're making sure that they're out in compliance, and I'm sure that's what Joe's going to be doing. JR and Joe Papa Nicholas will be making sure that our contractors are performing compliance with the contracts.
So there are representatives of an agent, they're an agent of the agent.
Yes, heads of the contracts we're approving to identify them as our agents.
And its payments get submitted every month from the contractors. Leggett will, by contract, review those applications for payment and approve them. And then it would come to probably our administrative team who would then authorize release of payment through the escrow account.
And that's what this contract we're entering into is for.
Kind of one more comment, since we're talking about bidding, and one of the clauses in Nicholas's contract 2.1.6 subcontractors and suppliers talks about how you're going to develop bidders' interest for the project. I think, you know, having been on the board for a while, there's going to be some good expectations that for each individual trade package, we're going to get 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, competitive packages to the market. So for each of the individual packages, that's not specifically called out in the individual contract, but I think as a board, you know, we don't want to see recommendations with 1 or 2 bidders.
Absolutely. We have a very large pool of contractors that have proven themselves to be competent over the years. So between that large pool of contractors, as well as working with the district, with maybe some contractors that do have experience within CUSD200. But at the end of the day, we expect a lot of coverage for every bid package.
We're still going through a public bid process, though, to get the lowest competitive, best qualified bid. Is that correct?
Yes, we have to provide a public bid notice, and then above and beyond that, we send out invitations to bid to the pool contractors.
Any further comments or questions? I hereby ask for a motion and a second to approve the contracts with Leggett Architects and Nicholas and Associates as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Paulson.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hanlon. Mrs. Hutchinson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mrs. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Broman?
Yes. The motion to approve the contracts with Leggett Architects and Nicholas and Associates as presented is approved. We now move to the third action item, approval of 2018-19 fee schedule. Dr. Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Broman. So, again, this is a continuation of a discussion that actually started after we passed last year's fee schedule. And one of the items requested from the board was that through the Finance Committee, we carefully examined this year the fees that are associated with athletics and activities, which we did through the fall. The Finance Committee brought back to the full board over, I guess, your last meeting. There were a couple of questions asked at the end of the last meeting that I just wanted to provide responses to, and then I'll see if Mr. Farley has any additional comments on the recommendation in front of you this evening. There was a question in regard to fundraising and where's the oversight for fundraising. Both high schools do have a system in place for oversight of fundraising activities. When a coach or an activity director is requesting a fundraiser, they have to submit that request to the athletic or the activities director that indicates what they're raising money for, how much money they anticipate that they're raising through their activity, and how they're going to go about doing that. So again, that is in place at both of the high schools. If somebody is requesting a fundraiser, it has to be for a specific purpose, and again, the targeted amount and what it's being used for is identified. The main reasons why our activities and athletics do fundraise, A, is to pay for any cloth expenses. The district does not provide a budget for any uniform expenses, so any cloth expenses come out of fundraising. If an individual activity or athletic group has a particular specialized piece of equipment that they're interested in purchasing that may be over and above what we would provide through our budget, oftentimes they'll fundraise for that. And then 3, if they are targeting a trip or a tournament that involves some type of travel out of town, they fundraise for that expense. And again, they fundraise for that purpose so that when the students then in fact do attend that trip, the parents are not paying additional money as a part of the trip. That's covered through the fundraising activity. A question was asked about participation fees for low-income students. So low-income students do free or reduced students pay either a reduced fee or do not pay a fee for our athletic activities. For activities, each of the high schools does in fact have a system in place where if somebody does need financial support, there's a mechanism for them in fact doing that. The fees are not waived for activities, so show choir, that fee is not waived. However, both of our high schools make sure that they have mechanisms in place that cost is not a barrier for a student that wants to participate. So they've worked with or set up some scholarship opportunities to make sure that that cost is not an issue around that. There was a question asked just on as we were looking at the budget numbers, how many positions is that funding, especially in the athletics budget, so that aggregate cost that you were looking at funds 174 individual coaching positions at the high school level and 60 coaching positions at the middle school level. So that if you're kind of equating that to like your FTE cost for a teacher, that's kind of your FTE component, your individual stipends that are covered through that aggregate, $1 million+ budget. And then finally, I think Chris had asked the question just in terms of the discrepancy and the basketball numbers between the two high schools, Wheaton North, Wheaton Warrenville South. The discrepancy in that budget is based on the fact that Wheaton North runs a tournament over the holiday, and so the cost for officials are paid out of that budget, makes it look as though the expenditure budget is higher, but there is a revenue source that comes back in and pays the district back for that. So the district or the school are not covering those additional referee costs, but I think as Mr. Farley kind of looked back at that expenditure probably should have been pulled out of there when we did the analysis. Those are not different budgets across the schools. So I think those were the major questions that were asked last time. We can certainly follow providing additional information, but I'll just kind of fast forward to our recommendation is that the fee schedule for this year remain as it is for the current school year. So we are not recommending an increase in either the kind of across the board fees or any of the athletic activities fees for next year, where we are recommending to the board a fee schedule consistent with this year. Let's find anything that I missed in that. And I will verify that all of on that fee schedule are a bunch of individual course fees. Those do reflect actual costs. So those individual course fees reflect the actual cost that we know for each of those individual courses.
Questions from board members?
I would like to hear, since I've been vocal about fees, and I know the fundraising aspect of it, I think what I'd like to do this year is get a handle on that. Maybe we can pull numbers for the last couple of years of what different sports have fundraised. We can get an idea of true costs. I keep going back to what is the true cost to parents. I think there's sometimes maybe more of a perceived, they think they need to fundraise a specific amount. I don't know how well we're doing with communicating. I have parents that have come to me and said, I have to sell X amount of this for my child. And then yet I hear sometimes it's, no, that's what the target was. But what is truly the expectation for the parent for the cost of this? So that's why right now I don't feel I can support raising the fee until I have that true cost of what it is. And I feel like we can, I know that's a hard one. I know it's a hard one to do, but I think each sport knows what they have fundraised in the past year. And I think we need to just kind of have an idea of what those expectations are, and then also be able to look at, is there one sport that keeps going out every single year and buys and buys and buys things that maybe they don't need to be doing, that cost is now shifted back onto parents. So I think we need to take a hard look at that, as well as I think we need to take a look at lacrosse is now going to be in the mix. Are they going to continue to be paying full costs for everything? And the other thing I'd like us to look at this year is driver's education, because we did not have a conversation about that either. So over this year, whether it's the Finance committee, another committee, I just think those are things we need to have a better handle on and look at that. And I do think, like I said, lacrosse needs to be kind of looked at as well in that mix. And, are we going to look at bringing them into the fold, doing it overall? And then I think the other thing is we talked about what is it that we're looking to fund? Are we looking to fund 20, where it's 25%, is it 30? I think we need to come up with that number as well over this year.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for your attention to this matter. A couple of questions. Number one, on these fundraising activities, such as the sale of coupon books or whatever the case may be, do those go through the activity funds of the district? Okay, so they're under the scrutiny of the district, the finance area, and the expenditures they're under are also. And that's true on all the fundraising projects. So good. Okay, I'm going to ask this question in advance, the one that I ask every year, and I hope to have an answer when the audit comes out, and that's the balances. I want to make sure we don't have any accumulating balances that are significant in any of the activities unless they have a plan to utilize those. Because I think your point, Chris, is that at times they just do it to do it, and I don't want to have that pattern in place. But now, if it takes 4 years cycle to replace uniforms, and that's the understanding, it can be justified, that's fine. But I think that's something that I will continue to ask. And I guess staying fixed on these, I'm sure the underlying costs have gone up CPI, if nothing else. So, I mean, a lot of these costs are, driven by salaries and so on. So, I'm not real excited about leaving them fixed, but I can live with the recommendation of the administration. But I think it's, it is what it is. But I don't think it changes our big picture numbers. But we're looking at how to fund things that we don't have the revenue source for now. So it troubles me a little bit. I think it's important to give it further consideration.
Any other comments or questions from board members? Hearing none, I ask for a motion and a second to approve the 2018-19 fee schedule as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Crabtree.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Paulson. Mrs. Hutchinson, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Crabtree.
Yes.
Mr. Paulson.
Yes.
Mrs. Erickson.
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani.
Yes.
Mr. Hamlin.
Yes.
Mr. Matheson.
And vote no.
Mr. Broman.
Yes. The motion to approve the 2018-19 fee schedule as presented is passed. We'll now move on to the fourth action item, which is the adoption of resolution authorizing non-reemployment of full-time, first, second, and third-year non-tenured certified staff. Dr. Schuler.
Dr. Rever, you want to provide just a little bit of context for both of the next two items?
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. Yes, annually we need to, the board needs to take action on the non-reemployment of full-time teachers. The list that you have before you are people who have served as coverage for leaves of absence, and so those are all one-year appointments, and by law we need to release those at this point. The part-time, the next one, I'll just run to that one quickly. Those are part-time positions that these are part of our part-time positions that we'll release pending anticipation of staffing and needs. Some we may return, some we may not return, depending on what our staffing looks like as we get a little closer with the numbers a little more consistently. There are some part-time positions that we do not release because we know that we need to fill those positions moving forward, but these are the part-time ones that we're just not sure of, and rather than carrying those on the books and then not needing them and not being able to release, we'll release them now and then make the determination on employment later this summer or early in the fall.
Any questions from board members?
We're basically terminating, or we're issuing a terminating notice to all non-tenured employees. Is that no? There are some that we do continue, so these are more selective.
These are all positions, they're one-year contracts. So if I'm absent, if I take a leave of absence for a year, and one of these people covers my position, we're going to hire that person for 1 year. These are not continuing employment contracts, they're one-year contracts that end at the end of the year, but we do have to go through the process of releasing them, even though it's a one-year contract.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I ask for a motion and a second to adopt the resolution authorizing non-reemployment of full-time first, second, and third year non-tenure certified staff as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Erickson. Seconded by Mr. Hanlon. Mrs. Hutchinson, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes. And the motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the non-reemployment of full-time first, second, and third year non-tenured certified staff as presented is passed. The fifth action item is the adoption of the resolution authorizing non-reemployment of part-time non-tenured certified staff. Dr. Schuler, is there anything to add to this one?
No additional. I think Dr. Remmer just covered it with the last one.
And just to verify, are there any questions or comments with respect to this action item? Hearing none, I ask for a motion and a second to adopt the resolution authorizing non-reemployment of part-time, non-tenured certified staff as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Crabtree,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Erickson. Mrs. Hutchinson, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mrs. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani?
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yeah.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes. The motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the non-reemployment of part-time, non-tenured certified staff as presented is passed. We now move to written reports on the agenda. We've all received the monthly financial reports and the FOIA report. Reports from board members. Reports from board members?
Are you doing committee first or are you?
Yes, committee reports. No committee reports? Now, other reports from board members.
I'd just like to put a plug out there for TCD. Mr. Matheson and I had the opportunity to attend a fundraiser last month. Dr. Rammer was there as well. TCD is an amazing facility, and for those board members who maybe haven't had an opportunity to go there, I highly recommend you go during the day when students are there and see this opportunity. We are part of a consortium with, how many school districts is it, Dr. Rammer? 17 school districts that allow us to be able to offer courses for our students that wouldn't be cost effective for us to do within our own district. They have virtual welding, if I remember correctly, fire safety, culinary. The culinary is absolutely amazing. There is a mock hospital set up for a CNA program. Our students are able to walk out of there and sometimes with certifications and college credits that they're able to receive in high school. I had the opportunity to talk to a couple of Wheaton North students that I remember from their elementary years as a room parent. And they're going off to colleges with opportunities that they are so passionate about in the culinary field. So I would love, I asked Mrs. Loiacono if she could do a inside TCD visit where we projected out to the community. It's an amazing facility, and so if you haven't had an opportunity to go, please do so. I feel like if we could push it out there a little bit more and people knew, I know you got to start planning a little early on in your school career, but even getting our 8th graders, our freshmen out there and getting them excited about it, there's so many opportunities for students. I watched building and that happen there. It truly is amazing. So just had to put that little plug out there for TCD.
Thank you, Chris. Any other board member reports? I just have a brief one. In our May meeting, we're going to be at least discussing any possible resolution we might want to introduce the Illinois Association of School Boards, so I want to give you a heads up on that. And I got notification again from the Illinois Association of School Boards about a Leadership Academy Symposium addressing the public purpose of public schools in June. So if any board members interested in attending, I have the information here.
Can I ask a question on resolutions? Have we ever put a resolution out there, and maybe this isn't the place to do so, that something about the large unit school district representation with IASB?
We have not, and I know that you attended a I'll call it Chance to Chat with the Illinois Association of School Boards last fall, where we discussed raising that issue. It's something that I think we should pursue, and I think I'm going to be looking for a great avenue to pursue that, because we as a unit district ought to have more representation along with other unit districts in the IASB in some fashion somehow.
So can we partner with other, because I can tell you from the chat that I was at, there was a consensus within the room of large unit school districts that they felt similar. Is there a way we can co-sponsor a resolution maybe and it'd be more powerful?
Let me talk to Jeff about that. If there's a way we can reach out to 203, 204, St. Charles, Elmhurst, Barrington, I'd like to see if we can pursue that.
Just one more thing I wanted to mention. I meant to mention under our report, but it's been a very, very busy week of parent seminars in the district. We had a viewing of Screenagers yesterday. I think there's another one actually going on as we speak at Monroe, and then tomorrow night Bob is facilitating a panel at Wheaton-Warrenville South on parents, teens, parties, and the law. So Bob Berlin, the state's attorney, is going to be there, as well as our social workers from Wheaton North, and I think a psychologist, right, from the area. So a huge message as we enter into prom and graduation season. I think that's a message we've got to keep getting out to our community, is how we can be smart and really take care of our kids and each other. So, but I do want to give a quick kudos to Erica and the team, Tracy, who's been working on those parent seminars. They really worked hard this year to boost the quality of those seminars, and we've had a significant increase in attendance. Many of our parent seminars, we've been up over 100 attendees, and really, really, really good stuff this year. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we discussed that yesterday during our community engagement committee meeting. You'll be getting the minutes of that at the next board meeting. But this is a great avenue for community engagement and community outreach, these parent seminars, and I want to emphasize the plaudits. I want to extend to Erica and her staff for what they've done for these parent seminars. They're wonderful. They really are. Topics for future discussion. One, professional development report, and update on social emotional learning. So those are the topics we'll be addressing in the future.
And Jim, there's one more that I just want to add to that, to give a little preview of May board meeting coming in May. We've got a finance committee meeting coming up where we're going to be dealing with phase 3 of your debt restructure. So that was a 4-phase plan, and we're coming up on phase 3 that's targeted for May activity.
On April 17, we have a chat with the board between 8 and 9:30 a.m. at Wheaton North High School. April 25, 2018, we have a committee of the whole meeting at 7 p.m. at the School Service Center. And our next regular board meeting will be May 9th, 2018 at 7 p.m. at the School Service Center. Any public comments? I hereby ask for a motion and second to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussing the employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on the complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2, subparagraph C, subparagraph 1, and collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or the representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2, subparagraph C, subparagraph 2. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Paulson. Seconded by Mr. Matheson. Mrs. Hutchison, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mrs. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani?
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes, the motion moved to closed session and adjourn this open meeting session is hereby approved. We are hereby adjourned.